Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So I had planned on starting the show talking about the Rand Paul NSA situation. I've got a story that I am definitely going to try getting to at some point during the show. It's from thehill.com. And you might actually be surprised what Rand Paul believes about the NSA and what Rand Paul, if he were to somehow become president of the United States, what would he actually do with the NSA? That might surprise you. But I've had a change of plans. And, you know, it's one of those things to where I'm doing my pre-show news stuff and just like, you know, one more pass through looking at Facebook to see if I see any news stories, if anybody tagged me in something. And what do you know? Lo and behold, about 20 minutes ago, as of the time that I'm recording, by the time you hear it, it's going to be more than that. But, you know, not too terribly long ago, I get tagged by one of my friends in a series of posts about Heather and Chase Hironimous. You may recall, I've covered this story in the past, that Chase Hironimous is the 4-year-old boy, and Heather is the mother. They have been in and out of court, mainly the mother has been in and out of court, fighting with the father over whether or not Chase should be circumcised at the age of 4 years old. And the entire thing started because when the parents wound up splitting, they were told by the courts, you have to sign a parenting decree. And this is going to be a binding contract. And if either one of you violate, then you come to court and the judge figures it out. And in amongst the parenting decree was something stating that at some point, Chase would get circumcised. And Heather, at the time, signed it. And then at some point later, she changed her mind. But the parenting decree was never changed, and I don't know if it can be changed absent judicial decree. But anyway, for the last several months, this has been a pretty big news story. And some of the news reports, they've oversimplified this. And they've reported that Heather was being charged with contempt of court for refusing to have her son circumcised. What actually happened, she was charged with contempt of court for a couple different things. The first and probably the biggest was missing a court date. And, well, now she got arrested a couple of weeks ago. And now today it's being reported that she signed the decree to allow the father to have the son circumcised. And there's a series of tweets from someone named Mark J. Freeman, who apparently is down in Palm Beach County, and he's tweeting. And the first one is about 3 hours ago, is earlier this morning. I think it was about 10:30 this morning. He writes a tweet, breaking, in Palm Beach County Court, a crying, handcuffed Heather Hironimous just signed consent for 4-year-old son's circumcision. The next tweet, Heather Hironimous initially declined to sign consent form. Lawyers left courtroom. She changed her mind. Everyone returned. Judge Jeffrey Gillen told Heather Hironimous she would be held indefinitely unless she signed the consent. She relented. Judge Gillen implored both parents to work together in future for best interest of their son. Hironimous will be released from jail soon. Handcuffed mom signs consent for son circumcision to get out of jail, and it links over to a news article and something that was posted within the last hour. Update, mom signs consent for son circumcision to get out of jail, now faces new criminal charge. So I've got that story pulled up, and I'm not going to repeat everything that I've already said or recover what has been said. I'll pick up in the middle of the story. I'll post the link in the show notes. You can read the full story if you want to. So the story here, beginning about halfway down, third of the way down, says Judge Gillen said that the act effectively removed a contempt of court charge and Hironimous would no longer be held in jail because of it, but her legal problems aren't over. The act that they're talking about here is her signing that consent decree. Hironimous, however, now also faces a criminal charge of interfering with custody from her time keeping the boy from his father in an apparent violation of a custody sharing agreement. The charge is a third-degree felony, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. Court records showed that Hironimous has a first sentence scheduled before a criminal court judge on Tuesday morning. It then mentions someone named Hunker, and I've not read the entire story to figure out who Hunker is. Says Hunker, who is also listed as her defense attorney. So Hunker is the last name of the defense attorney. Told reporters he was not permitted to speak about his client or any plans to seek her release from jail. In March, the judge declared the mother had willfully violated an order enforcing a 2012 parenting plan she and the father signed that allowed for the circumcision. The parents were never married, so this was a case of two people had a kid, never had the government papers saying you're married, and then obviously because they never had the government paper saying they're married, never got government papers saying you're now divorced, so they were together, they split up. And they're both trying to do what they see as what's best for their son, and I do feel bad for the mother. Don't in any way think that I don't when I say the following. I have a hard time empathizing or sympathizing with her for willfully violating a contract. And I realize that maybe you didn't want to enter into the contract, but it was a contract nonetheless, and she has violated that. And I've missed court dates. I've got a warrant in South Carolina right now. I've spoken about this several times prior. And if I ever go to South Carolina, and I like to refer to my warrant in South Carolina as a no trespass order to the entire state of South Carolina, because that just sounds funnier than, oh yeah, I've got a warrant. But the warrant that I have, it's for missing a court date because the cop told me the wrong day for court, so, shame on him. I had fully intended to go to court and ask for a jury trial. But because I missed the court date, because he verbally told me one day, wrote the wrong day, and I think all he did was, forgot what number month May was, and he wrote a 4 instead of a 5. So, long story short, I can't go to South Carolina. If I ever go there and get arrested, I'm not going to make it some big thing and tell people, put up free Darryl sign. No, screw that. I'll continue my rant when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. All of your funds on Coinbase are safe, with approximately 90% of customer funds being stored offline, and all wallets are stored using AES 256 encryption. To date, Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. That's coinbase.fppradio.com. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's FANS.fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. So I'm mid-rant here about I can't go to South Carolina because of this warrant. And I don't think I actually stated in the last segment what the warrant was. I know I've talked about it before, but I'll just go ahead and I'll say it again. I was supposedly speeding. I supposedly ran a stop sign. And I supposedly was not wearing my seatbelt. The only one of those three things that I admit to having done was not wearing a seatbelt. But the entire thing, it was like a $187 ticket. Again, the cop told me the wrong day. He was like, your hearing is May something another. And he wrote on the ticket April. But he didn't write the word April. He wrote 04, which is the number for April. I think he just got confused and wrote the wrong number, but whatever, it's on me because he gave me the wrong information. And at the time that this happened, I was working for an airline, worked at the airport, saw cops all the time, and I asked one of the sheriffs in Horry County, South Carolina, where I was working. I said, hey, I've got a question for you. If I get pulled over and get given a ticket, and the police officer verbally tells me a day for the court date, but then writes something different on the ticket, what happens when the day passes because he wrote something different on the ticket? And the response was, well, it's on you to make sure that you know when the court date is. I said, so wait a second. You could give me a ticket today and tell me that my court date is December 1st, but write on the ticket that it was yesterday or this morning or tomorrow. He said, yes. So, long story short, basically cops can lie. They can make paperwork errors, but it's on you to rectify the error. So, let's just say that I get a ticket today and the cop writes that the hearing was yesterday. There's absolutely no way that I could make a hearing yesterday for a ticket I received today, but it's still my fault for missing a court date. And I realize that's not exactly what happened, but, when he told me May, this was in April. The hearing date that he verbally told me was 6 weeks later. What he wrote down was 2 weeks later, and I was on vacation at the time of the court hearing. I missed it. But I'm not going to, whenever I go to South Carolina, I'll just, show up at some police station somewhere and say, hey, I've got a warrant, let me sit in jail for a weekend and make it go away. And I'm not going to, post something like, I got arrested for this, everybody post bond, or whatever. If you're not willing to face the repercussions for willfully missing a court date, then you should not willfully miss a court date. And I realize that it sounds like I'm coming off harsh, and in some ways I am, but in other ways, I certainly feel sorry for her being in this situation. And part of the reason that I do feel sorry for her is the fact that there is this parenting decree that the court said you must have. And that's something that some states have, where they say you must have this, sign the paper. So she signed something somewhat under duress, maybe, or maybe she changed her mind, and she's been trying to get this thing changed, but in the long run, it is really difficult for me to feel sorry for her for willfully violating the contract. So that's enough of that. again, I'll post the link to the news article. You can read all about that. And now let me jump into the story here from thehill.com about Senator Rand Paul. And I know that, this is probably going to upset some people that I'm talking ill of Senator Rand Paul. But he made a lot of headlines on Wednesday for this thing that he called a filibuster that wasn't actually a filibuster because he wasn't preventing anything from being done on the floor of the Senate. And now the Senate has extended the time before they begin their holiday recess. They were supposed to have gone on recess today. Now they're going tomorrow. And it appears as though, unless something changes, it appears as though the USA Patriot Act, Section 215 of that, will be extended. Whether or not the House actually comes in to vote on and pass the same thing that gets passed in the Senate, that's another story for another time. But the story here from The Hill has the headline, Rand Paul would not abolish the NSA. And I realize that, for some people, this is a really tough pill to swallow because he got up there and he stood and he talked for 10 hours about how the NSA was horrible. Except for in all of the times that the NSA isn't horrible. Essentially, Rand Paul's position on government spying is that government spying is wrong unless the person that wants to spy goes to a secret court in the government and gets a piece of paper saying that it's okay for them to spy on people. So the story here from The Hill reads, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, a top critic of the National Security Agency, said last Sunday that if he were elected to the Oval Office, he would not eliminate the agency, but refocus its bulk collection of phone records. Quote, no, I would actually keep the NSA. In fact, I would have the NSA target their activities more and more towards our enemies. This from an interview on NBC's Meet the Press. His answer came in response to a question from host Chuck Todd, who referenced Paul's very critical, and critical there in quotes, critical comments of the NSA in his forthcoming book, Taking a Stand, Moving Beyond Partisan Politics to Unite America. And that book is due out later this month. And I do think it's kind of funny that Rand Paul, who's a Republican, is saying that we should move beyond partisan politics, when in fact, as a Republican, that furthers partisan politics. The article here continues. On Sunday, Paul pointed to incidents in which authorities came into contact with suspects who were later involved in the 2013 Boston bombing and the recent Prophet Muhammad cartoon contest shooting in Garland, Texas. Paul said on NBC, I want to spend more time on people we have suspicion of and we have probably cause of, and yes, that's actually what is written here, probably cause. I'm guessing they meant to write probable cause. And less time on innocent Americans. It distracts us from getting, or rather it distracts us from the job of getting terrorists. Although he doesn't expound, or at least this article doesn't expound on what he means by terrorist. We'll continue with the article when we come back. And I also want to touch on an article from Reason.com about why the USA Freedom Act is not actually all that good or really does anything for freedom. That's when we come back on Peace, Love, and Liberty Radio.
The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. ExpressCoin is the best choice for buying Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and more. ExpressCoin prides themselves on their customer service, so much so that the back end on the website should allow them to be even more focused on your needs. Get your cryptocurrencies with money order, check, wire transfer, or cash deposit. Get started at expresscoin.fppradio.com. That's expresscoin.fppradio.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. Before I continue with the story here from thehill.com, letting people know what libertarians have known all along, that Rand Paul would not actually abolish the NSA, I want to make sure that I let you know about Liberty.me. Liberty.me, it's more than just a social networking site. Of course, they do have the social networking aspect of the website, but they have other things that make it more than just like a libertarian Facebook. There are chat rooms. There are discussion forums. There is publishing areas to where there's like, you know, the best parts of WordPress mixed with the best parts of social media. And there's also a lot of free audio. There's a lot of free ebooks. They even have what they call Liberty Guides, where they're not quite book length, but, you know, it's information that you really need in a lot of cases. Some of it's just, you know, weird random info that, you know, you may not need, but it's nice to read about and learn about. But they have all of this, you know, the ebooks and the Liberty Guides, they're all there free for members. But one thing that separates Liberty.me from other social networks is that Liberty.me is a service that you pay for. And the reason that makes Liberty.me more special, in my opinion, is that it keeps out the internet trolls. And if you've been on any social networking site for long enough, you know what I mean when I talk about the internet trolls. The people that just show up, want to cause problems, and then sit back and laugh. Well, you don't have that on Liberty.me because it's a paid service. And you can get a discount on the paid service when you sign up and use code FPP Radio. Liberty.me, code FPP Radio. That, I believe, saves you $5 per month. And, you know, I'm fairly certain that you'll like it. If you don't, then, you know, like, there's no money-back guarantee. But, you know, let me know. If you do sign up and you don't like it, let me know. Liberty.me. Use the code FPP Radio. So the story here from thehill.com, it continues. Rand Paul's father, former Representative Ron Paul, has maintained that the NSA needs to be abolished, along with other intelligence agencies. He also brushed past a question. I'm guessing the he in question here is Rand Paul, not Ron. Rand brushed past a question on a move from his fellow Kentucky Republican, Mitch McConnell, to extend by 2 months a June 1st deadline to reauthorize controversial NSA surveillance powers under the USA Patriot Act. Paul said, quote, "Really, it ought to stop. If the president is obeying the law, he should stop it immediately." That in reference to the NSA's bulk collection of phone data, citing a recent ruling from a federal appeals court that found the program to be illegal. McConnell is moving forward with a clean reauthorization bill to extend expiring parts of the USA Patriot Act, which the Senate is expected to take up this week before the Memorial Day recess, despite opposition from both sides of the aisle. And according to a story that I saw on antiwar.com, they're expected to vote tomorrow and I guess begin the recess after they vote on Saturday. And yes, they're planning to vote on Saturday, which is something that is unusual for the Senate, or actually any branch of legislature to do, is actually vote on Saturday. But otherwise, they can't really do anything. But if what gets passed through the Senate is different than what gets passed through the House would need to come back from recess early next week in order to vote before the June 1st deadline. And I don't know if that is going to wind up happening. But let me now jump over to the article here from Reason.com that asks the question about the USA Freedom Act. The USA Freedom Act is being called by some a reform of the NSA, and yeah, you can guess by the name, because bills that come up, they generally have nothing to do with what the name is. They generally mean the complete opposite. So USA Patriot Act is actually a very unpatriotic act that allows for governments to do horrible things. The USA Freedom Act, it in some ways changes how the bulk collection of data happens, but it doesn't stop the bulk collection of data from happening. The full name is the Uniting and Strengthening America by Fulfilling Rights and Ending Eavesdropping, Dragnet Collection, and Online Monitoring Act. But what it actually does is requires the telecommunications companies to collect the data, and then the NSA can get the data from the telecom after they go to the FISA court. The FISA court, of course, being the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court. So let me give you some information here, and I definitely do not have time to cover this entire article, but I will cover what I can, and as always, the link will be in the show notes. The USA Freedom Act is Congress's response to the public revelation and the following outrage that the National Security Agency has been for years secretly collecting mass amounts of domestic metadata from virtually all Americans as part of its goal of sniffing out terrorists. It has been doing so under the aegis of Section 215 of the USA Patriot Act, which supposedly allows the NSA and FBI to collect all sorts of data and records that are relevant to an ongoing investigation. But the NSA and the FISA court that oversaw approval of record collections requests took a very, very wide view of what was relevant, and that included, among other things, the phone records of every single American. And this also means that every American that's not single, basically everybody in the United States, man, woman, child, married, divorced, whatever, they wanted your phone records. There was an awareness among privacy experts that this was happening, but because the entire process was classified, the ability for anybody, even members of Congress, to do much about it was limited. Then Edward Snowden came around and released information showing how remarkably expansive the surveillance actually was. This all came as a surprise to Representative Jim Sensenbrenner, who introduced the USA Patriot Act in 2001. He said it was never his intent to authorize mass collection of data of Americans in the first place. The USA Freedom Act, which Sensenbrenner also sponsored, is intended to reform these procedures. But as I said, it doesn't actually reform anything. It doesn't stop the collection. It just changes who does the collecting. But it still allows the NSA or any other branch of federal government to get anything they want with a warrant from this secret court. Link to the article will be in the show notes. And as always, Peace, Love, Liberty Radio is online at fppradio.com.